Do you want to learn how to make this pouch with no pattern needed? You don't need to buy anything other than your fabric? Well, stick around. I'm going to show you how to make this, how to fussy cut out the middle. I'm going to tell you what fussy cutting is, show you how to use this ruler, putting in a zipper, boxy bottoms. You guys, this is such a great tutorial. So go grab some fun fabric. Let's sit down at our sewing machines together and let's make this adorable pouch. You bought a ruler because you saw somebody use it in some way and you thought, that's really cool, I need to have it, and then it comes and you get it and you don't remember why you bought it? Yeah, raise your hand. Guilty. It happens to me all the time, and I'm embarrassed to say I have more rulers than I can count that I've never used because I forgot why I bought them or how to use them. So I am trying to dig into my ruler stash and look at them and go, why did I buy this? Why did I buy this 8.5-inch squared up fussy cut ruler by Creative Grids? I don't know. But now, I do know now, I remember, but, you know, I had to look it up and figure out, why did I buy this? And so I'm going to show you guys how to use this ruler and then what to do with the piece that you fussy cut. And many of you might be sitting there going, what is fussy cutting? What does that even mean? Fussy cutting is a method of cutting out pieces of your fabric. I mean, there's so many fabrics that are, I mean, look at how cute this is, right? But what if you just want to use this one little milk carton? You would fussy cut that out. And so I'm going to use this ruler and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I'm going to lay this down. The first thing is the ruler is clear so you can see through it, which is important. Now you might be able to see these holes here kind of all over. Those are your marking holes so you can mark around your subject. So what you want to do is line up your subject, which is this milk carton. And then you need to keep in mind that you're going to have a seam allowance, so you need to leave at least 1/4 inch all the way around. And so I would like this to be square. So I'm centering it in this 3-inch block here. I want what's inside the black lines to be visible. That means I need to cut it out on the outside of those black lines. If you can see this dotted line here, that's your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if I cut it out on the dotted line and then I sew it, I'm going to end up this dotted line. If I cut there, then when I sew it, what's going to be visible is what's inside the black lines right here. So I'm lining this up so that I can see exactly what would be visible. I also want to make sure that it's centered. And I can just see by lining this up, my little milk carton is 2 inches wide. So I've got the edges of that lined up on the lines. I'm centered pretty much between the top and the bottom. I'm just using those lines as a guide. And then you might be thinking, well, how do you cut it out when it's, you know, it's a hard solid surface? That's what those little holes are for. So I'm going to take my Sew Line fabric marking pen and I'm going to go to those 1/4 inch lines. That's this one right here. So we want to keep it within the 3-inch square. So I'm going to mark on the outside and I'm just going to put my pen in these little holes and I'm going to mark little dots. Okay, and you're going to use your ruler, mark it first, because that way you can really see where everything lines up and make sure that it looks good before you cut it. That way you have an opportunity to fix it before, you know, you cut it all out. Okay, so where this one is in the dark, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just utilize this ruler here and I'm going to line this up here to make sure that this edge is straight. Then I will know that it's straight here too. Okay, so I'm going to draw, let's see, right about to here. Of course my mark was right in like the darkest part of this other milk carton. And then line. So now I can see all the way around that carton. To make sure you're keeping it straight, I'd recommend using the ruler. I'm just going to go all the way off that edge. That way I'm not cutting too far into the fabric so that I can utilize the rest of it. So now you've got this perfectly centered milk carton that you can use for the center of whatever your project might be. I want to show you, like, what am I going to do with this little guy? So I thought it would be really fun today to make a quick little zipper pouch where we do some quilt as you go and some fussy cutting. I'm also going to show you how to put in a zipper. So hold on tight. We're gonna just make a quick little pouch. I'm throwing this together. I am not using any specific pattern for this. So I've got one thing I love to use for a backing, especially for these projects, is fusible fleece. So you gotta decide, what size do you want your project to be? Make this 10 inches wide by, I'm gonna cut it 8 inches tall, because once I sew the bottom, to keep things straight when you're cutting them out, I'm lining the edge of this ruler up here along the edge that I already cut, and then I'm also lining it up with the edge of not only the fusible fleece, but I'm also looking at the lines on my cutting mat to make sure everything is nice and straight. You want to sew with your fusible side facing up, okay? So I'm going to start with my cute little milk carton. Now keep in mind, this is going to have a boxy bottom. So you're going to lose about, depending on how big you want your bottom to be, I'm going to take out 1 inch. So I'm going to just want to remember that 1 inch up from the bottom, I'm going to lose that. And why that's important is because if you put this down too low, you know, it won't be centered. So I like to just draw a line because that's where I know that it's going to fold over on the bottom when I'm done with this project. So now if I want to center this, I'm going to center from the top to the middle. And we've got about 8 inches here. So if you, you do not have to be this fussy. You can do this however you want. This is meant to be a scrappy kind of throw it together project. So I'm just kind of eyeballing this, looking at where the center was, measuring, and I like it right there. I want to measure from side to side. And we're pretty much in the middle right there. So we're going to just leave that there. Now, this is a great scrap project, and I do have some scraps. This line of fabric that I'm using is from Ruby Star Society. It is called Juicy. It's one of my favorite lines. Some of these scraps from another project I was doing, which would be perfect for this, because we are going to just sew strips or scraps or pieces all around this block until we fill up the entire piece of fusible fleece, including this bottom. You want to cover that up. So I've got some scraps, I've got some salvage edges here. I'm just going to use up some of that, but I'm also going to use up some of this layer cake that I have from this set. And what I'm going to do, because they're all my 10 by 10 squares, I'm just going to cut off like 1.5 to 2 inch wide strips to use for my project. Does not all have to be the same. You can use different sizes. This is a scrappy project, so keep that in mind. And don't worry about the length. You're going to see how we trim this up as we go. You can make this any size you want as well. We are doing this with no pattern. You don't need one. All right, you're going to need your scraps, whatever your fussy cut pieces and your fusible fleece. I'm going to use this wooden roller. You can use your finger. We're going to do some what's called finger pressing, but I love this wooden roller. I got this at QuiltCon when I was there. The brand is Violet Craft, so you could look them up and see if you can find the wooden one. And then you're going to want a scissor nearby because you're going to do a little trimming as you go. So I like to set my stitch length at about a 2.5. And now all we're going to do is we are going to sew these scraps onto our block, and we're going to build as we go. So we're going to just start. I always like to lay things out and decide, okay, what piece do I want where? And I think I want to start with this blue. I love the idea of having that butterfly right at the top. So I'm going to start with that one. And you just simply put your right sides together. And we're going to sew. I'm going to use the yellow block as my guide. We're going to sew from here to here. You want to make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end always on this for this project. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, And the way I'm doing that is I've got a 1/4 inch presser foot here on my machine. So I'm lining up the edge of my fabric with the edge of this foot. That way I know I always have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now we're going to fold back your fusible fleece out of the way so you don't trim it. And we're just going to trim this up. It's aligning with the edge of the yellow fussy cut square. So we're going to trim off the excess on both sides. Simply open it up. So you can simply finger press. This fusible fleece is a little grippy, so it kind of grabs it for you. You could press it with the roller. That gives you a nice, like, flatter seam. The biggest thing is you don't want any wrinkles in your seam. Here, you want it to lay nice and flat. Now we're going to take whatever scrap you want. That's the fun of this. You just build as you go. And we're going to put it on, so you could do the bottom next. I'm going to do the side because I don't want it all to be even. I want it to be a little offset. So I like to just lay it there first to see, okay, do I like that? And yeah, I think it's cute. So I'm going to lay this down the same way. And now we're going to sew from the top of the blue to the bottom of the yellow. Cut off the excess. I always keep my excess scraps. They're handy. They're real close to me. That way I can utilize them if I need to because they're just more pieces. And I cut more than I need for this project because I just like to have variety while I'm working. So next, you could go here. You could go here. I mean, you could put this piece wherever you want. I love what that pink is adding here. So I'm going to add it to, but I kind of want to keep the flowers vertical. So I think I'm going to add the pink there, but I want to do the bottom one first. Okay, I gotta tell you, this little wooden tool, I have another roller that's plastic, but that wood, that's working really, really well. All right, now we want to add the pink. So that's our first section done. We just are going to repeat this process throughout the entire piece. And again, like I said, there's no rules. You can go any direction you want to. Like, you can just keep building any way. Like, I could add this to the side. I could add it to the top. It doesn't matter which way you go around your block. Now all that's really left are 3 more pieces. We're going to have our sides and then our bottom. Now remember, the bottom is not really going to be visible. It's going to be on the bottom. We're going to trim it up. Use your hands first to make sure everything is smooth, that there are no wrinkles. Now, we used fusible fleece. So now I'm going to press this and they're all going to stick to the fleece. If you don't have fusible fleece and you just have batting, that's okay too. I just love fusible fleece. I tend to use it a lot. And so I have a bit on hand for all of these projects. It's not required. trim off your excess. The fusible fleece is the size of our pouch. I'm trimming off excess fabric. Then I'm going to square it up to make sure it's the size I want it to be. This is our front. Now you can make the back in this same manner. We're just going to use a piece of fabric for the back side. I want to get these in the center here. So I'm just going to line this up. Trim it so that these are the same size. So now we have our front and our back. And now you need 2 more pieces for the lining on the inside. So you do the same thing, decide what pieces you want to use for the inside, cut them down to the same size as well. Okay, these are our liner pieces, back, front. I want the back and the front both to have fusible fleece. So I'm going to just take my fusible fleece and I'm going to cut it out. And you can also put fusible fleece on the liner, then it's going to be extra quilty. You don't have to. You could also use nothing at all. You could use a lighter weight stabilizer if you want to add a little stability to the inside of the pouch. It's not as necessary. I like it to be a little bit more rigid on the outside. So I'm just going to fusible fleece attaches really quickly too. So now you can decide how do you want to quilt the front and the back. I tend to just quilt along the lines to just add a pop of detail. Your sewing machine didn't come with a guide. Like this one did not come with a guide. I have this little attachment that I got on Amazon that is a universal guide that you attach to the foot, and then you can see how far apart your stitches are going to be using the guide here. I don't need it for what I'm going to do on the front, but we'll use this piece for the back. So for the front, I'm just going to use my my seams as a guide. So what I like to do is do some top stitching. I extend my stitch length to about a 4, and I'm lining up the edge of the fabric to the inside of the foot. That's going to give me just not even 1/8 of an inch of top stitching. And I start right at the top of that piece. It doesn't matter where you start. And I'm just sewing straight down this front piece. So you can see I just top stitched. I'm going to repeat that on all of the strips. So now this is all quilted all the way across the top. Now on the back piece, just because I want to quilt it, you don't have to, but I want to, and I want to show you how I use this. So you just unscrew your foot, press your foot, okay, and then you just put that back in, make sure to tighten it. This should not be dragging here because you want this to glide above your fabric. So you can decide how far apart you want it. It just slides up and down. I will link this in the comments or down in the description for you. This was a gadget on Amazon. I think it was $7.99. Diagonal quilting, so sometimes I will just go and I will draw an X from one corner to the other. You only need to draw these starting lines. You don't need to draw out all of your other lines because that's why we're using the guide. So you sew along one of the lines to start out with. Then you're going to use your guide, and your guide is going to follow the line you just stitched. So you're going to line up your needle, and you're going to watch the guide and to make sure you're staying straight. And then just let your machine pull the fabric through. That's what those feed dogs are for. Okay, then when you get done on that side, you flip it around and do the same thing the other direction. Okay, then when you're done, you go to the other side, stitch along the line to start. And then we'll just continue the same process using the guide. Look at that. All the quilting is done. Now, because I used a fabric marking pen, this is an air erasing pen. So those lines that I drew will just disappear on their own. You don't have to do anything to get rid of them. They'll just disappear. But look at just what that quilting adds. It's simple, straight lines. I think it just adds so much to the overall finished project. What we've got our front and our back, and then we have inside panels. Again, if you want to add fusible fleece to these to make it more quilty, you can, but this is pretty stable on its own, and for a smaller zipper pouch, I don't feel like you need it, but again, if you want to, please make sure you add that, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a zipper. Don't be scared. Promise you, it's easier than you think. Now I've got this really cute blue zipper that I just knew when I saw it, it had to go on this bag. Now, I get my zippers from my friend Alexis at Idle Blooms. She's got some of the cutest zipper designs ever. If you just go to idleblooms.com, that's her website, you can order so many pretty zippers. I like to use zipper by the yard, but you can get regular zippers too if you want. Now, if you're using zipper by the yard, you have to add your own zipper pull, but then you can trim this to whatever size you need it to be. So I'm going to start by just putting the zipper pull on. Now, can you see these little frayed edges here? That happens a lot because this is nylon. Now, very carefully, take a lighter, light it, and just melt those edges. It's going to make putting on the zipper pull a lot easier. It just kind of melts them all down and gets rid of the fraying. Just be careful when you do it. Now, open your zipper, and you're working like the back of the zipper is facing me. This is on a zipper jig right here, okay? And also the back of the zipper pull is facing me. All you're gonna do is slide the teeth in, and you're sliding them in together at the same point to keep it nice and straight. And now I'm just going to pull them down. And it doesn't always work like that on the first try, but today it just did. So the zipper's on, that's all you need to do. Now I always zip it off to the end to keep it from having, see how it's got a little bit of a bubble in it? Once you open it up though, you get rid of that bubble. I'm also going to just melt these edges because I see a little bit of fraying. It just makes everything easier. Now generally, your zipper is going to open from the left to the right. Now you don't want to cut your zipper the same size as your pouch. You need to leave a little bit of room for turning. So I like to leave a 1/2 inch on each side. So I'm going to cut this down. So I'm lining it up here, and I'm going to mark on this edge a 1/2 inch down from the edge here. And that's where I'm going to trim my zipper. Okay, so this part I can use for another project later. So now we have our zipper ready to go, but we've got to cap the ends. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to make, and do I want that piece or do I want something else? Now I'm like, oh, what scraps do I want to use? Yeah, I want to use pink. I'm just going to go with this. So you need two pieces that are approximately 2 inches long a piece. Sometimes I go with 2 inches wide as well, but I'm actually focusing on the print. So 2 inches wide is good. So we've got these two pieces. You do not need to put interfacing on these. So you're going to need your iron. What you're going to do first is fold them in half, just finger press them down. Then you're going to take the ends and you're going to fold it to that middle. You want this to be at least as wide as the zipper, if not a little bit wider. So I'm just going to press that down and then fold it in half again. And it's going to keep all those raw edges are tucked in. So those are your little zipper tabs. I'm going to take our tabs and I'm going to put the back one on first. We're going to go back to the sewing machine. And now, because this is a nylon zipper, you can sew right through the teeth. So what you're going to do is just wrap that around the end of the zipper. And you're just going to sew it in place. If you have a little stylus, that helps kind of push it through so you're not using your finger like I just did. Then I'm going to just pull this zipper open and I'm going to put these teeth together, and before I add it I'm going to just sew over the teeth to hold them together. A zigzag stitch works great, but this machine is a straight stitch only. And I'm going to do the same thing on this end. These are essentially your zipper stops. They make so you cannot, pull your zipper all the way off the end. We don't want to do that. And if you do have excess, you can trim off any excess so that the zipper tabs are the same width as the zipper. Now, we're going to make a zipper sandwich. Don't eat it. I like to start with my zipper about halfway open. You're going to adjust this as you go. So you're going to put your zipper face down, clip it in place, and sew that down first. And you're going to sew it right along that top edge. So clip it, pin it, keep it in place. The one thing you need to pay attention to is this, the zipper pull, okay? So I'm going to show you two different ways that you can do this. So we're going to start by just stitching the zipper to the front panel. If you have a zipper foot, it's very helpful for this part. But this is also a straight stitch industrial machine. So it's a little bit different than a lot of machines. Most zipper foots are kind of, they come to a point at the top. Mine is just really little. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew, and I'm using my seam guide here, because you want to sew about 1/4 inch away from the top, and you're going to just sew the zipper in place. Now, don't fight the pull, okay? If you just try to sew past it, you're going to get a wobbly, wonky zipper. So what I like to do when I get to the zipper pull, leave the needle in the down position, lift up your presser foot, and just glide it up there past it. So you're not trying to sew past it. Most of the time, The zipper pull is not going to move, and what's going to move is your sewing, and then your stitching won't be straight. Now our zipper is sewn in place. So now we will take our lining, and we're going to do the same thing. Lay it on the top, and we're going to do the same stitch. We're just going to sew across the top. So that's why I was saying, if you've never done zippers before, or if zippers are a little bit tougher for you, sew the zipper in place first. If you're comfortable doing zippers, you can make the zipper sandwich to start out with and just sew one time. My edges weren't matching up there, so I'm just adjusting this a little bit. Now we're going to do the same thing. Remember, pay attention to where the pull is. I know where it is, so I am paying attention, so I am going to move it once I get started here. Okay, it's right here. I'm not even going to attempt to go past it. I just lift up the needle. I'm going to actually bring it down first because I don't have a lot of room at the top yet. So I'll have to move that again. Just always know where that is and just move it out of your way. Okay, I got to the pull again. So I'm just going to slide it up out of the way there. Okay, so now what you should have is your front, your zipper, and the liner. This is what it should look like. I am going to just press along this top edge. Make sure your zipper is nice and straight, that everything looks good. You have your pouch right side facing up. So your front is facing up, your zipper is out, then you're going to take the back and you're going to do the same thing, zipper sandwich. So now we've got that there. So if you would rather stitch your zipper in place first, that's what you do now. Make sure your sides match up. You're 1/2 inch away from the sides here, and that you're lining it up with this top edge. I'm just going to go ahead and add this piece now, making sure everything is all lined up. So I'm just looking to make sure I can see the zipper. Remember where the pull is so you can get it out of your way when you get there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move that. Just going to pick up my layers. And when you take off that last clip, just make sure and look that everything is staying lined up at the top there. This is what this should look like. When you open up your liners, you should see the back side of the zipper and the top sides of both of your lining pieces. So it should look like this. We're going to press this down and then we're going to do some top stitching. Unless I'm doing something that needs a specialized foot, but generally this is what I sew with all the time. Now for top stitching, we're going to do just like we did on this front panel, and I'm just going to line up the edge of my fabric with the inside edge of the foot. You should not have to worry about your zipper pull here, but if it's in your way, make sure you move it. You don't try to sew beyond it. If you want this to be a envelope style pouch without a boxy bottom, you're just going to sew it together. If you want to make it so it's boxy, And what that means is it's like it forms a little square on the bottom, so it's flatter around, along your bottom. You're going to have to cut out the corners. So that's what we're going to do next. So this is our corner cutter. This is a cutting tool that we developed on our website, and it's got 4 different sizes for you. It's got 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inch, and 2.5 inch. It's all marked on the cutter so you can see it. But what this does is you just line it up in your corner. Where is my pen? Take your marking pen and you just mark your 4 corners. This way they are all exactly the same size when you want to put your bag together. You just want to make sure you always use the same size on all 4 of your corners. Then you're just going to cut those out along the pen lines. And you're cutting through both the liner layer and your front layer. So next up, open your pouch about halfway. Don't forget that part. You're going to take your 2 front your front and your back pieces, and then your liner pieces are going to line up. We're going to sew this all together. So you can clip or pin around your edges. I like to start by lining up my notches on the bottom. And then when you get to the zipper, push the zipper towards the liner. You're going to match up your sides up here. Go ahead and clip your liner pieces together. Now when you get to the bottom of the liner, some people prefer to do this in the side. I always do it on the bottom. But you need to leave an opening so that after we sew this, I've lost the rest of my clips. Oh, they're way over there. I'm just going to use some pins just to make sure everything is held in place here. So I like to mark a space along that bottom edge for turning, and I don't like to fight with my project when we're turning it right side out. I like to give myself a little bit of extra space. And so what I mean by that is I like to see how much room do I need to get my hand in there comfortably. And so I just kind of mark on each side of my hand, and so I'm only going to sew the liner to those marks. So you're only going to sew from the edge to the mark. But now we're going to start on this side. We're going to sew to the edge of the corner, and then we're going to sew here all the way down, across the bottom, across the side, and then over here.
So I'm using the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, and I'm just using the edge of my quilt. Want to make sure the back stitch at the beginning and the end. Now when you get to this edge, this is where the zipper tabs are. You should be sewing right, either right over the end of them or right alongside it.
Now we need to make the boxy corners. So we're done sewing all the way around except for our opening. I'm going to pull these apart just like that. See how they kind of just want to lay together? Line up your 2 seams, your bottom seam and your side seam. And if you want to pin or clip this, you certainly can to keep those seams lined up. And then just pull the rest of your fabric out of the way. And you just sew across. that for all 4 corners. This end. And turn this right side out, and that is why you needed to open your zipper part way, because if you didn't, your hand is going to now get stuck and you're going to have to wiggle that zipper open with your fingers. So you're going to just grab these corners and pull this out through that opening. What I like to do is go back in through the opening and press out the corners. I'm using my fingers to pop those points out. See, now you've got this nice flat edge on the bottom. Then I also press out the zipper tab on both sides. So see, this side did not catch at all. It's just a little open right there. This side caught just a tiny bit, which is fine. Either way works. Now, we need to just sew up this seam. So first I'm going to pop out my points again with my fingers so that it lays nice and smooth when you're putting it on. If you just grab the edges and just push that closed with your fingers, you can either pin or clip this. We're going to go back to the sewing machine. We're going to sew that using a very scant 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to make sure that this closes, that it sews shut. So I start a little beyond, before the opening. And then just a little bit past it. So I know my opening ended here. I'm going to come just a little past. So you're not even really going to see those stitches right there. It's very small. So clip any loose threads that are hanging off there. Oh, this is cute. This is fun. And you just simply tuck the liner down, and I use my fingers to match up the points now, the lining points with the outside. Just use my hand. Make sure it's all lining up nice and neat, laying nice and flat in there. Isn't that cute? So there you go. That is fussy cutting with your ruler, and then some quilt as you go, putting in a zipper and making a pouch without a pattern. Wasn't that fun to make? I mean, isn't that the cutest pouch ever? Look at the white hearts on the inside, the fun little zipper, and the fussy cutting and the quilting, and oh my gosh, all the cute quilted Ruby Star goodness that you ever did see. Now, was this easier than you thought? Harder? Are you going to try to put in zippers? And remember, practice. My first zipper didn't look like this. You guys, I've been doing this for a long time. So just practice, take your time, follow the video. You can pause it, rewind it, watch it however many times you want. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming tutorials. We're gonna have more for you just like this. And I can't wait to see what you make. So tag me in your videos and your pictures of your finished pouches. I would love to see them. And if you wanna know how to make a really fun, really simple tote bag, watch this next clip.